we have our tchotchkes here to celebrate National Fruits and Veggies Month. I believe the hashtag is Have a Plant Nation. And this is the Produce Reporter Week in Review. I have Greg Johnson, our Director of Media Development, and I am Pamela Riemenschneider, Retail Editor for Blue Book Services. Is it going to come up? There we go, Have a Plant. I mean, you have better Have a Plant swag than I do. I have the shirt, but mine's, I actually already wore it this week, so it's dirty. That's a good thing.
I'm also in the darkest room in the house, so I really don't need shades.
Well, we are talking about some of the top stories that we had for the Produce Reporter newsletter. And actually, the first one I want to bring up, I haven't published yet. It'll go in tomorrow's newsletter. But I'm talking about one of the things that comes up for our readership quite often. The Dirty Dozen and Clean 15 is actually one of the top clicked articles that we have that's evergreen because people are so curious about what's on that list. Well, this year, that list kind of fizzled. You remember that? Where?
Oh, do I remember it? In fact, in this issue of Blueprints, which is the current issue, I wrote a column about how much it fizzled.
Yeah, and that was great. So we thought, until what's up, Consumer Reports? Consumer Reports has, coming in their October issue, they basically rehashed the data and come up with their own analysis based on the same data from the pesticide report from the government, basically. So it's like, come on, really? I mean, it can't just go away on its own. I kind of feel betrayed by Consumer Reports, but there's actually a few things that I'm a Consumer Reports member, actually. I love their stuff. Usually I love the supermarket ratings because they're so detailed. And one of my favorite things that they come out with is the sunscreen ratings. Who would have thought that Walmart's Equate sunscreen would rate so high? I would have thought that. Right? Oh, yeah. This stuff is great. I got the idea from Consumer Reports, and people give me the eye, like, no way that, you know, Walmart sunscreen is one of the best ones out there. But a couple of years ago, it did come up as one of the most effective ones, and I've been using it ever since. But now, they've gone over the pesticide data program stuff and with their own analysis have come up with actually some ratings that are surprising to me.
Who got hit the hardest?
I feel like green beans and spinach got hit the hardest. And strawberries, of course, is one of the ones that typically comes up. Cherries, also pretty high. That's one that comes up on the Dirty Dozen and Clean 15, which is also called the Shopper's Guide to Pesticides in Produce. That's the official title from the Environmental Working Group. But actually, so their analysis does more than just presence of the number of pesticides. They dug a little deeper into it. And I even, you know, I've looked at these lists for a long time. I know growers, I know the industry. I typically watch out for things that I know come up as exceeding pesticide residues. There are a couple of items that you know we report on that often come up, like cilantro, for example, has come up before of exceeding pesticide residues. Green beans, on the other hand, is not something that's been on my radar, and it got the red blocks on Consumer. If you know Consumer Reports, oftentimes their ratings are based on the stoplight. It's, you know, the red, yellow, and green. And looking at this list, which also includes canned items, gave me pause at the store, and that's what scares me. It gave me pause, of all people.
Yeah. Do they factor in the fact that simply washing your produce in cold water rinses off a lot of that residue?
I do not remember seeing anything in the article about washing produce. And that's the other thing. I felt like it was a big, you know, blinking, glaring elephant in the room, black hole missing from the story, is that most things you can just rinse off 10 seconds under cool running water. It doesn't have to be cold. And the other thing that I remind people about that 10 seconds under running water thing is, are you actually counting to 10? Because so many people just take an apple and just swish it under the water and then they're done. They don't actually, put it under the water. Here's my potato, for example, and actually wash it off. And if you have a potato, you just get one of those little vegetable brushes. I mean, these usually have just a tiny amount of dirt on them, but people don't wash for 10 seconds. It's the same as having to learn to sing happy birthday twice during the pandemic to remember to wash your hands for long enough. Nobody does it.
No, probably not. One of the things that PBH, for instance, always would bring up in regards to the Dirty Dozen is when you tell people that eating certain fruits and vegetables is dangerous, then people get that stuck in their head, and then they can't remember which one it was, and then they just don't eat any of them. And they don't
Right.
not eat. They never not eat. So they
Right.
replace it with something else. And it's usually from the center of the store, and it's usually considerably less healthy than fresh fruits and vegetables. And this thing seems like another way to repeat this terrible cycle. And
Yeah.
one of the PBH studies that they did last year was they found that lower income families were hit hardest by this because it can be a struggle to buy fruits and vegetables sometimes because of access and cost. And when they were presented with this information, it made them less likely to put forth that extra effort, which just leads into a cycle of bad health.
Yeah. And when you think about, I mean, organic markup, it kind of has this cycle of the gap between organic and conventional. For some items is getting smaller, but for other items, when you think about something like organic strawberries, for example, that's one of the hardest hit items. Organic cherries, cherries are an indulgence for most people in general. They're not cheap in general, and organic cherries are even more expensive and less available. So that just raises the bar on access for a lot of these fruits and vegetables. When we talk about the spectrum of, benefits, risk, cost, overall benefit, and overall risk, is it worse for you to eat non-organic cherries or potato chips? I mean, so it's really tough to see something like this come out. We know that it's just now starting into September, and they always release these things ahead of time. The most recent one that targeted fresh produce was lettuce, and I think it kind of hit a little bit, but I didn't see it get a ton of. I didn't see it on the morning news, for example. I didn't see it on the Today Show or anything. So maybe this is something that also will go out with a fizzle instead of a bang.
Yeah, we can hope so.
What else?
Food box.
Oh, food box! Oh my gosh!
Yeah. So
Food
last week, right before we did our video last week, USDA announced the BOA, which is the contracts for the next round of food boxes, which it was supposed to start September 1st, but they extended the July-August round to mid-September. So we're currently still in that one. And the list we saw was something like 50 or so companies, and they all were approved for combo boxes. And there were a decent amount of fresh produce companies on there who would now, if they got these contracts, have to pack meat and cheese and dairy. And so we reached out to a few of them, and coincidentally, both the ones who I got a hold of this week were based in Missouri, as am I. One is in the city of Kansas City, CNC Produce, and the other is just south of St. Louis proper, Wholesale. And I talked to both of them, and they both said, yes, we've submitted bids to do the whole combo boxes, and they both said we have good facilities here. We've learned how to be efficient through the food box program, just doing fresh produce. And both are extremely confident that they would be able to fulfill their contract if they got one. And the contracts have not been announced so far. But it sounds like these two companies are pretty confident they're going to get it. And one of the concerns when we heard that this round 3 would be combo boxes is that fresh produce companies would have a hard time being able to first find all these meats and cheeses and dairy and milk to fulfill that contract, but also packing it and putting it in the trucks and delivering it. And these two that I talked to acted like, no problem. We got it under control. They both have warehouses. Proffer said they had an enormous warehouse that they could easily change temperatures within to hold their product. And they had dozens of trucks. And they said, we're totally up to this.
All right. Well, it sounds like we're ready to hit the ground running, although they did go ahead and extend the last ones a little bit because it seemed like everyone was still catching up. There's so much uncertainty with how people are eating right now, especially with schools going back to in-person learning and virtual learning. And the school lunch program even decided to extend through the end of the year, free school lunch for everybody. So that's another thing that I know got a lot of traction among the produce industry and then people who are just interested in children's nutrition. So the government is definitely stepping up to kind of fill some of these gaps in accessibility for food.
Well, one of the things I heard this week on a Washington conference call from United Fresh is that they indicated that USDA has said the program is not going to be funded after October 31st. So that will be one of the things that United and the people who attend the virtual meeting this year, when we talk to Congress and senators, we will say, we believe the system works, it's doing what it's supposed to do, and what it's supposed to do is not only relieve some pressure on the market because of economic problems, the food service market, institutions, but it also provides more product for food banks because there's higher demand. Mm-hmm. And I don't see a scenario where that's going to not be the case after October 31st. So that will be one of the arguments for it to continue. And it seems like a bipartisan winner, so I would expect that there's a good chance. It seems like there's something right toward the end of October, beginning of November that it's kind of fixated everyone about. So we'll see how that has an impact.
Yeah, we'll see how that has an impact. When is the Washington Public Policy Conference, by the way? The Washington Conference is what they're calling it.
Washington Conference, the week of September 21st.
So that's coming up in a couple of weeks. And of course, that's virtual, as are, pretty much all of the produce industry events for the rest of the year, it seems like. So that's definitely something, if you are interested in, making your voice heard as far as these food boxes go, and then a couple of other things that are going on right now. The U.S. Trade Representative has brought up some issues and a plan of action to investigate primarily blueberries, I believe. But it was one of those things where we mentioned when the tomato suspension agreement dispute was going on, is this going to open the door for investigation of other items? And it appears that perhaps that is the case. We've got the U.S. Trade Representative investigating these items. The FPAA says this is kind of undermining USMCA, which was just ratified not too long ago.
Right.
So a lot of trade issues, a lot of Washington type issues. So if you have a strong opinion on it, I suggest you join in with the Washington Public Policy Conference or the Washington Conference, whatever it's called.
I'll be on there.
Yeah, Greg will be on there. I will be holding down the fort. Well, that's it for the Produce Reporter Week in Review. If you are not getting the Produce Reporter newsletter, you need to go to producebluebook.com and sign up. Happy Labor Day weekend. Don't forget your sunscreen. See you later.